welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Geekorama, the podcast by geeks for geeks. We are produced by superherofiction.com, the one-stop shop for all of your superhero novel needs, and now the largest website dedicated to superhero fiction. We are your hosts.
I'm Jeremy Flagg, author of the Children of Notre Dame universe.
And I am T.L. Heinrich, author of the Vigilantes superhero universe. What are we talking about today, Jeremy?
Oh, so we got a lot of good stuff. We're going to be talking about the poll list. I'm actually quite interested in hearing about this. I have Weird Geek Epiphany today.
Ooh, very exciting.
But for our deep dive, we're going to be talking about conventions. Thank you, pandemic. We are longing for those massive spaces in which we can crowd in with other geeks and have no personal bubbles.
Yeah.
When I think about it, it's actually not sounding like a easy sell.
No, it's not, and yet I'm craving it.
I know.
I don't understand.
My introvertness is ready to extrovert. So we're going to talk about some of our favorites, which is kind of cool because I'm East Coast, Trish is West Coast, so we got different stuff happening there.
Yep.
Some you may have even heard of. So, do you want to start with the poll list?
Let's do it.
For this week's, I actually decided to go read something that I don't know why I've never read it, but Marvel Zombies is a thing.
Okay.
I have my Magneto action figure, but more importantly, I have my zombie Magneto figure.
I didn't know there was such a thing. Zombie Magneto.
So, once upon a time, there was an entire different universe of Marvel called the Ultimates. And in the Ultimates, it kind of took everything that we know about comic book lore and reinvented it. So that it was a way to get people into comics without having to read 8,000 back issues. And my favorite thing is still the X-Men because of how much all their crap cost. They had to get corporate sponsorship. Because how else are they funding this? I don't care if Charles Xavier is rich. That jet alone gets destroyed every other issue. So
yeah, exactly.
But in this universe, Reed Richards opens up to another parallel world where there is a zombie virus and they escape.
Thanks, Reed.
And they bring it back to them in this universe, and it manages to hop into another parallel universe in which creates the Marvel Zombie universe.
Oh my God.
So it's very similar to the comic book mythos that we know, but there's no Captain America. It's Colonel America. Real subtle changes, but this way it can be part of the mythology and not destroy everything. But what really surprised me is Marvel Zombies is creative team is Sean Phillips, June Chung, and Robert Kirkman.
Huh.
If the name sounds familiar, it's from Walking Dead. And
interesting.
Invincible. So I kind of just, I love zombies. So I was like, okay, this is just going to be a standard zombie novel where the story is actually about the survival of the non-infected people and them fighting with each other to whatever. Very Walking Dead. That's what I was kind of anticipating. But it's not. The main characters are actually the Marvel zombies. And it follows kind of a hodgepodge group of Avengers. And they've all been infected, and they are all eating everybody quite graphically. Like, there's blood everywhere, like so many teeth. But when they eat, they regain parts of their consciousness. And Spider-Man, every time he eats, because they're zombies, they have to eat human flesh, he starts to have a meltdown because he ate his wife and aunt. And he knew it was wrong when he was doing it, but he couldn't resist it.
Holy shit.
Oh my God. I never thought the perspective of the zombies would be so horrifying. But that minor thing about them regaining some of their consciousness, like the Hulk, when he feeds, he turns back into Bruce Banner. The hunger turns into the Hulk. So when he's satiated, he doesn't remember feeding, so he's hungry, but like he can obviously see, like there is a very graphic scene where Magneto's leg pops out of his stomach. It's not for the faint of heart, and I love gore, so this was even
wow.
But it's there are moments that were so disturbing.
I bet.
I love zombies, and for me to say this is I want to make sure that we understand the bar has been set high. Reed Richards of this universe is inspecting a zombie, and he's basically fallen in love with the idea that this is the next evolution of mankind and the efficiency of how they operate. And like, he completely lets his brain just be infatuated with it. And so he calls the rest of the Fantastic Four in, and Sue is already mad with him because like she thinks he's crazy.
He kind of sounds crazy.
And he's going on and on about it, and she's like, "You've lost your mind," and he goes, "You'll understand soon." And she's like, "We're out of here," and he goes, "No, I've already infected you all." And so they turn into zombies, and he is elated by the fact that they are eating him, because now he's going to become part of this better, more efficient machine. Oh my God.
Did you enjoy this book?
It was disturbing.
Yeah.
The fact that Hank Pym is keeping T'Challa basically sedated so he can eat parts of his body for the good of mankind, because he's trying to find a cure. And so he is using him to regain parts of his consciousness. Like, it reminded me that most zombie stories, the reason that they're so horrific has nothing to do with the zombies. It's what mankind will do to survive. So it maintained that. Robert Kirkman knows how to touch a nerve and just rub it raw.
Holy shit, this is super disturbing.
And I didn't realize that. I'm a little bit excited by this. The first series was a 5-issue run, and then they did a prequel to show how it led up to it.
Yeah.
And oh God, like just nothing goes good. But there's 4 more series of it, and the last spot that I read, they had just devoured the Silver Surfer, acquired his powers, and destroyed Galactus, and now the zombies are part Galactus, and they're not only consuming the people on worlds, but the worlds themselves. The next series is Cosmic Marvel Zombies. So I'm in for it. I'm ready to be disturbed. The writing was magnificent. The artwork was disturbing. So for what it is, if you are a zombie fan and you are a superhero fan, this gets 5 out of 5. 5 very creepy capes.
Wow.
So yeah, I scratched a lot of itches today that probably should not have been scratched in that order.
Oh my God. Yeah. I just kind of feel like my pull list selection is going to be really lackluster after all that. Like, where do I go from there?
Yeah, so I'm really hoping that you have something a little more cheery, because
I do. So my pull list selection is called An American Covenant by Lucille Scott. And the subtitle, and I'm reading it off the book right here in front of me, is A Story of Women, Mysticism, and the Making of Modern America. So I listened to a book several months ago called Waking the Witch that touched on some of the women involved in the mysticism movements in America, in particular the ones that were towards the end of the 19th century going into the beginning of the 20th. So like the mediums and the psychics and that kind of thing. And how those women, the women that were in the forefront of those movements actually did influence. It was the suffragettes were heavily connected to these mystical movements because these movements were very much all about equality of the sexes and how your gender doesn't really matter in terms of your worth in society. They also were big early proponents of birth control and divorce for women, which was an incredibly hard thing for a woman to actually get in the early 20th century, especially to get custody of her children. That was incredibly rare. So you could get out of an abusive marriage, but you had to leave the kids with your abuser most of the time. So these mysticism movements in the early 20th century were very heavily connected with suffragettes and women's rights movements. And what they called it was called free love, but really what it was about was how a woman needs to have just as much right as a man to get out of a marriage that wasn't working. Because men could divorce their wives and not give them any financial support. Like they could divorce their wives for any reason whatsoever, but a wife could not divorce her husband. So those kinds of things. And so this book is about the women at the forefront of some of the most influential mystical movements, mystical beliefs in America. And it starts out with a woman that I've been curious about for years, and that is Madame Laveau. And for those of you that don't know, I'm going to get her. Yeah, Marie Laveau, the Voodoo Queen of New Orleans. Her grave is a place of pilgrimage for people to this day that ascribe to voodoo and hoodoo. There were two Marie Laveaus, apparently, which I did not know. And I also didn't know that New Orleans, prior to the time that it was just that America was basically just like, yeah, you're our town now. They were a place where women had a lot of freedoms. And we're talking very much pre-Civil War. So early 19th century here, women were allowed to divorce their husbands. They were allowed to own property. And we're talking Black and white women were allowed these freedoms. Slaves were able to actually buy their freedom. It was law in New Orleans before America came in and took over the city. It was a law that your slave had to have the right and the ability to buy their freedom. So it actually had one of the largest freed men and women population in the country at the time that America just kind of took it over. And Marie Laveau. There's not a ton known about her because records really weren't kept very well at the time. But it is believed that she was a child at the time when New Orleans was taken over by America. And so her earliest life was with this freedom. And in fact, her mother was a Creole woman who either was a slave before her birth or was a slave at the time of her birth and earned her freedom. So Marie Laveau was a Black woman who was raised with all these freedoms and really took on the mantle of voodoo, which was an amalgamation of several different kinds of beliefs. It was beliefs that the African slaves brought over with them. It was beliefs from other people that were living there at the time. And she took this mantle of this, voodoo priestess. And as restrictions became tighter in New Orleans for people of color and for women, they also, voodoo, which at the time, when she was a child, was openly practiced as an acceptable religion, right alongside Catholicism. By the time she was a grown woman, there were a lot of restrictions being placed on voodoo practitioners. And so they had to go underground. And the way that they did this very successfully, and to this day, it's still kind of a part of the practice, is they took Catholic saints and they made them voodoo deities. And so you could go to Mass, and it was really more about giving worship to your voodoo deities as much as it was honoring the Catholic saints. But Marie Laveau really created a religion that is to this day sacred and practiced in New Orleans in particular, but other places of the world. It was a way to she gave other people of color this freedom, this touchstone with a culture that had been stolen from them. And she, by the time of her death and the death of, there were two Marie Laveaus. One of them was a daughter or a granddaughter. And so by the time the last Marie Laveau died, voodoo had really been forced underground, and it with this veneer of like, people thought it was Satan worship, and it's not. There's really nothing. Like, the devil is a Christian construct, not something of voodoo. But she created this very mystical faith that was very female pro-positive, and it influenced other mystical practitioners of the time. And Zora Neale Hurston, who was a famous African-American writer from the Harlem Renaissance, went down to New Orleans and actually got her hands on some writings by Marie Laveau, which are now lost, unfortunately. But so Marie Laveau's influence spread well beyond New Orleans to the people of the Harlem Renaissance and to other practitioners of voodoo, and also mysticism and psychics looked at voodoo to draw inspiration. And so it starts off with her, which I could have had a whole book about Marie Laveau and I would have been so happy because I think she's fascinating. But it goes on to Cora L.V. Scott, who is one of the most famous psychics of all, like, America. She pretty much founded the psychic medium movement in the early 20th century. Helen Blavatsky, mother of Theosophy, was a fascinating woman. Weird woman. Susanna Budapest, who was a feminist witch and founder of Dianic Wicca, which is one of the largest Wiccan churches, really movements in the world. And Marianne Williamson, who was a presidential candidate, recently presidential candidate, and preacher of the New Age gospel of love. And so it's about these women and their influence on American politics, on American social movements. And it's really giving a different perspective of history, which I feel like is so desperately needed. It's a giving a view of history from religions and beliefs that are much maligned by the majority of people, much misunderstood, and giving us a view of these women who started and brought these movements to the forefront of American culture and thought. And then for the most part, most of these women were then branded as insane and charlatans and unworthy of these leaderships once these movements got big and was bringing in money, quite frankly. And so she's really bringing out their contribution to America and to, in particular, feminist movements from the early 19th century all the way to the last presidential election.
I lived in Salem for 8 years, something like that. I went to college there, and once you strip past the tourism aspect, there is actually a very strong and vibrant voodoo community tucked away from the mainstream, which was always amazing to interact with them. When I used to website work for some of the stores that very, very commercial in the front of the store, very traditional behind closed doors.
Yeah.
But it was always fascinating.
She talks about that. That's the other part of it I should have brought up, is it's also part memoir for her and her search for meaning and spiritual awakening. So she talks about going to voodoo shops where it's exactly what you're talking about. It's very commercial in the front, and then behind that is where the actual voodoo practicing happens. She visited mediums. She visited, talked to Marie Williamson. I mean, just all these really, it's a fascinating book. It really is. I give it 5 out of 5 capes just because it was just so broad ranging and really well written.
Ready for Geek Out?
I am. I went a little long on that one. Sorry.
My Geek Out is actually going to be kind of short because I like this enough. I don't want to actually spoil it.
Oh, okay.
Marvel Zombies started with Spider-Man. Tom Holland played Spider-Man. Tom Holland just released a new movie with Daisy Ridley.
Oh, okay.
I'm officially being able to play the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon with superheroes. So who Kevin Bacon was in X-Men. I'm sure I could do this. So Chaos Walking just came out. If you've listened to me rant so far, you've definitely heard that I have been struggling to find decent sci-fi. I've had to open up foreign markets and start hunting, and this never even hit my radar. It just came out, so it's only available on iTunes, I think, right now. But the reason I thought it was really interesting is my writing group has a lot of conversations about superheroes, and we talk about the reality of things like telepathy. Like, no one really wants this.
No.
And it wouldn't actually work the way you think it would, because it just wouldn't be good. And I feel like Chaos Walking, which is actually based on a novel, unfortunately, I don't know the author off the top of my head, but the idea is mankind left Earth. We don't know why. We don't really care. As you do. And they wind up settling on this foreign planet, New Earth. Mm-hmm. And this town has been really regressed into, like, they ride horses, but they have guns because they salvage from ships. But you can tell they've been there for a while. They've created a farm community. There's no women. And okay. I know the girl from Star Wars is in this, so where are we going? And the weird thing is all the men have I can't even remember what they called it. The voices. Something. Can't remember what they call it now. Of course, I'm going to lose it. But basically, when they think, their thoughts are audible.
Oh, God.
little plumes of color appear around their heads, and their thoughts become visible and audible. And so there are no secrets.
Oh, my God.
And you meet Tom Holland, who constantly is just repeating his name in his head over and over and over. He says it, I think, 268 times in the movie. And the reason he's doing this is because he's trying to hide his thoughts. And he's not really good at it. He's Tom Holland. I mean, he kind of plays Tom Holland. And so all of a sudden, a ship from somewhere crash lands, and he discovers it, and he discovers a woman, and he's never seen a woman before. So and he's fascinated, and more so, he's fascinated because she can hear all of his thoughts, but he doesn't know what she's thinking. And
so
for
it's
him,
quiet.
Yeah, it was interesting because you realize, if this were a real situation, and it is a real situation, we experience this with our partners all the time. I know what I'm thinking about my partner. I don't know what they're thinking about me unless they voice it. And it really pushes that concept. And it is really kind of sweet interactions between Tom Holland and Daisy Ridley. Like, they do a really good job. There is a comical scene where all of a sudden he's like, I really want to kiss her. And he's thinking it. And she's like, okay. And so they start making out. And then, of course, the trick of the camera pulls away, and she's looking at him like, ew. And he's like, oh my God. his fantasy was visible, and she saw it. And so it really kind of explores that insecurity I think that we all have.
Yeah.
And then the idea of there not being any women really becomes interesting as he discovers that they're not the only town and that women still exist. And so he's been betrayed, there's been lies, there's a religious subplot, which kind of I think fell short in the movie. But I don't know how this would work in a book, because I think it would be really hard to get that same insecurity on page. But it was a fascinating concept, and I think it did a really good job. And Tom Holland's adorable, and so you're just like, oh, he's so sweet. So I really would suggest checking it out. It was good sci-fi. I'm not going to say it's, the end all of the universe. There were some plot holes where I was like,
And it's on iTunes?
Yeah. And there's definitely some spots where I'm like, oh man, I wish this movie had been a half hour longer so they could have explored this variation of it. And I almost feel like a book would have done better for the plot, but the movie did better for the concept.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So it having those moments when you're like, are they really making out? Oh no, the camera's just messing with me. It would have been way harder to execute well on page. So
yeah,
I would definitely check it out. Who knows if it's going to be it is a complete movie. You're satiated at the end. No need for a sequel, but you can see where they could expand on the concept. So I would definitely. Yeah, it was yay, they're making sci-fi again, and the first one didn't suck.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's my Geek Out. I am excited to hear your Geek Out, because I did also watch this just before that movie.
So my Geek Out is Godzilla versus Kong, because do I even have to justify this? So I saw this was Dan had this on. Full disclosure, I haven't seen the whole thing. Like, I didn't watch the first 30 minutes of it. Dan had it on. I was working. Exactly. I went in. He's like, I can turn this off. I'm like, no, go ahead. Let it play. I wasn't lost at all, because there's no plot. You don't need a plot. It's a glorious block of Swiss cheese, and I did not mind any of the holes whatsoever. The Screen Rant does a great pitch meeting spoof about this movie, and it shows you all the plot holes, and I don't even care. I don't care, because I got the awesome kaiju wrestling match of my inner 80s child dreams. Like, this was the SmackDown to end all SmackDowns, and they had it in a neon-colored Hong Kong, which I was so delighted. Like, I was literally sitting there going, oh, like, I wanted Kong to win. He was my favorite. I've got to be honest. I got a little soft spot for big, hairy things. But I was just so excited to see this SmackDown. And then when Mechagodzilla came into the fray, it was just everything I could have wanted. Like, Kong and Godzilla have to team up to take down the Mechagodzilla. And it made no sense. The birth of Mechagodzilla did not make any sense at all. The science none of it made any sense, and I did not care. I didn't care. I just wanted big kaiju battle, and that was what this movie was.
The only thing that so this movie is a plot-riddled fun ride. Like,
it is so fun. Don't overthink it.
Yeah.
Don't look for a story. You do not come to this movie for the story.
The only thing that irked me was when Alexander Skarsgård is trying so hard to explain the inversion gravity. Like, they went into so much depth and detail in his explanation, and literally he's just spouting random nonsense that has no bearing anywhere on this plot in the least.
We didn't need it.
You know what? his 10-minute monologue, buildings could have been destroyed.
I know, exactly. That's the only, like, they tried to make a big plot, and I was like, you didn't need to work so hard.
No.
You really didn't need to work so hard.
You could have paid him half that salary, cut out 10 minutes of him, and just kept showing me CGI things smacking each other. I'm okay with it.
I will say, when they went into the Hollow Earth, it was beautiful. That was some of the most gorgeous CGI work I think I've ever seen. It was beautiful.
My buddy paused it and goes, did they really just make a movie for an Epcot ride?
Yeah, why not?
Because you're going to go to Disney now, you're going to go get on that inversion gravity spaceship thing, and you're going to fly into the Hollow Earth. The ride.
Yep. You're going to have to avoid, like the lizard flying things. And then, honestly, Kong finds his ancestral home, and all I could think of is, oh my God, that's the Jedi Temple from Star Wars: The Old Republic. Like, they literally ripped off the design and made it a little darker, and I was like, I'm okay with this. Like, okay, I'm here for it.
So, I really liked Kong the movie. I thought that there was actually a really kind of thought out plot to that. And
I liked it too, yeah.
I wouldn't say it was perfect, but I enjoyed it both for the visual and for the story.
Yeah.
Godzilla, however, what I have learned is my issue goes to Transformers is a big proponent.
That's a whole mess. Yeah.
I am here to watch big things beat big things. Stop trying to make it about the humans who, if you actually deleted from the storyline, had no impact on the plot.
None. They are there to tell us what's going on, and that's it. That's it.
Millie
Bobby Brown.
Millie Bobby Brown and her friend, who, by the way, from Deadpool, just MCU connection.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen him, go watch the movie Wild Things. You will cry. You will laugh. He is an acting delight. This movie did not do him justice. But they're in there and they're like, we got to help him. We got to help him. Let's short out a computer. What did that computer do? Because it had no point in the plot.
Actually, the only thing it did was, so Mechagodzilla has this spirally death drill on the end of his tail, and he was about to impale Kong. So taking out the computer took out the death tail for 2 minutes. So
they built an entire computer mega center for the death tail. Where's the one that controls the right hand? Because something here is not working out in this. Well,
it was supposed to control, don't even overthink it. Apparently, in the pitch meeting, seriously, go watch the screen rant pitch meeting of this movie. I was dying because they were the guy was so and so from those other movies is gonna basically help them control the Mechagodzilla with psychic helmets, and the guy was like, wait, what? And they're like, yeah, just go with it, and it was so now he's possessing the Mechagod. I'm lost. He's like, sir, stop trying to make this logical.
So what actually happened was the dude who was acting as the body, he gets killed. Yeah. And the skull that's still alive
takes over Mechagodzilla.
Perfect sense. I'm there.
Yeah, let's just go with that. I don't even care. It could have been an out of control evil robot without any possession whatsoever, and I would not have cared. And now, the thing I will say about Skarsgård is he's very nice to look at. So I'm not upset that he was in it more than he needed to be.
Also, can I say, Millie Bobby Brown, I'm a little bit disturbed. She grew up during the pandemic. A year back, because is Stranger Things going to be in high school now? Because I can't believe that she's still a middle schooler.
No, not at all. She's amazing. She's freaking amazing. But no, this movie, don't watch it for the plot, people. Watch it for the fun ride. Watch it for the kaiju smackdown and the, frankly, beautiful CGI work. Like, if the Hollow Earth was like a vacation spot, I would book my ticket today. Like, it looks beautiful.
Because you brought it up, I need to do an honorable mention. I
Okay.
completely forgot about this, and I'm actually even going to recommend you watch it, and I know you're going to roll your eyes at me.
Uh-oh.
You need to go watch the honest trailer for Justice League.
I have. I watched the pitch meeting. The pitch meeting for Justice League is fucking comedy gold. Watch that shit. That is awesome.
Did they do another one for the Zack Snyder cut?
Yes. Yes, they did. Oh, it's so good.
The honest trailer, literally, he spoke to me. Like, he literally was sitting on the couch taking notes as I griped.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was, I mean, I feel dumb because I invested another 8 minutes in a 4.5 hour movie, but it was 8 good minutes.
I think I've seen the Zack Snyder honest trailers. I know I've seen the other one. But anyway, I'll watch that, but you watch the pitch meeting for the Zack Snyder one, because it was so good. It was so spot on.
It dangerously accurate, and you could save 4.5 hours of your life by watching the trailer.
Yeah. And really quick, I will say that Zack Snyder Justice League fans are trash pandas, because they review bombed Godzilla versus Kong because they aren't getting any more Zack Snyder Justice League movies. Like, I'm confused.
I mean, I think I would watch a Zack Snyder Kong Godzilla movie. Maybe he should do that. Leave superheroes alone. Go beat up kaijus.
Yeah, because there's no plot required. Actually, it might be a good fit for him.
Yeah.
Okay.
No
it
plot.
Would be very pretty. It'd be very pretty.
Man.
All right.
All right. We're going to go to a quick commercial break. And when we get back, we are going to talk about superhero conventions and maybe some other conventions too.
Behind every great superhero story is a sleep-deprived author. Join Franklin Kendrick every Friday as he takes you behind the mask and asks today's hottest superhero authors the burning question we all want to know. Do they always write in spandex, or is that just a weekend thing?
All right, we are back, and we are going to be talking about some of the highs and lows of superhero conventions. Mostly, we were talking, and we kind of miss being able to go see other geeks. So we decided that we are going to kind of lament on them. So here we go. One thing I did want to talk about before we even get into it is, when we're talking conventions, we're very much talking not conferences. We are talking about conventions, mostly fan-based conventions. Mm-hmm. Some of them are superhero-based. Some of them are fan-based. And I do want to just kind of write a little addendum to say that we are talking about very specific conventions, and we're even going to talk about some video game stuff that's a little bit outside the superhero purview. But there is a big difference between a fan convention, which is a very broad, bring whatever geek you want, versus a superhero convention, which is basically bring whatever geek you want to superheroes. So I don't think one is better than the other. I think fan ones sometimes suffer from there's too much fandom. It's too watered down. I want more of the one thing I love. Like, I would be annoyed if I went to a Buffy convention and there were pro wrestlers.
Yeah, that would be annoying.
Which is superhero conventions, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So we've kind of picked out some of the highlight ones that we've gone to. How many conventions do you think you've gone to total?
Not that many. 5, maybe.
Really?
Yeah. It's a new thing for me. I never went to them until I was in my 30s. And then I started going to conventions.
The first one I went to was Northeast Comic Con, which is in Marlborough, Massachusetts. It's at a hotel. I can't tell you what type of hotel, but it's not very big. It's big for a small convention. But I got to meet some really, really bizarre people that it actually started my writing career. But
awesome.
I bumped into Jonathan Frakes. Just
oh my God.
Literally bumped into, like, oh. I have almost knocked over half of the cast of Star Trek at this point because
oh my
God. But that was my first, and since then, and I would only say that's maybe been 6 years. I've probably been to about 30 since.
Oh my God. Yeah, you way outstripped me. It's just not something that was ever on my radar to do. And the only reason I started doing it was because at the time I was an actor. And we were, the first one I ever went to, we were filming a scene for a short film at the convention before it opened. And then we had passes, so I just stayed and hung around and that kind of thing. And then after that, it was we were premiering a web series, and we premiered it at the con. And that kind of got me started on, hey, this is actually kind of fun. And I'll talk about that a little bit more as I talk about the different cons I've been to, but that's kind of how I got started.
Have you ever vended at a convention?
No, because I've tried, but I've never been able. Well, actually, that's not true. I have. I vended with Todd, who's the voice of superhero fiction, does our commercials. I vended with him. I shared a table with him.
Okay.
For Jet City Comic Con.
So I probably vended. Oh God, maybe I've been to more than I thought. I probably vended at 15, 16, something like that.
I'm just bad at like, oh shit, that application had to be in last week. Like I'm really bad at keeping up with them. And then when the pandemic hit, it was like, well, what's the point?
I kind of, and not to say anything bad about conventions, I kind of, as an author, speak out against vending at them, not because of the convention. I've made some awesome fans that I still actually talk to today. It's the inventory you have to keep in your garage and the amount of money you have to foot up front. And for an author, that is rough.
Yeah. There is Geek Girl Con, I will say, does it right, because they not only, well, when you can get them, the last couple of years you couldn't get a vending table very easily, but they have 2 local bookstores that come in, and if you are an author and you're like going to be on a panel, you can approach the bookstore to have your books on their table, and you can sign them. So they have little stickers signed by the author. And then what they'll do is they'll also have it in the section speaking at Geek Girl Con.
Okay.
So, and it's really cool. Like if you don't have a table or you don't want a table, you can still get your books out there, but you have to book that. Like you have to arrange that way ahead of time because the bookstore has to get your books. They have to stock them. Like it's a whole thing.
When I did a teen creative writing panel on the Cape, and the local bookstore did that for us too, so that we didn't have to carry inventory, which I have friends who vend all over the globe. And when you start talking about having to ship a crate across the continent or to another continent, at the end, they literally, if they have leftover books, they throw them in the trash because it's too expensive to mail them.
Yeah. I have an author friend that she always shares a table with another friend who is also an author, but also does handmade jewelry and stuff like that. And so it's called Books and Chains because her jewelry is made out of chainmail.
Oh, okay.
And they both have chronic illness. So they always arrange to get like handy capable parking and like accommodations for their vending tables. but they have told horror stories about conventions that have screwed that up and made them lug like crates, like big boxes of stuff, like a block from their hotel room to the convention. And it just sounds horrific. And the reason she does it is because it is a large chunk of her yearly revenue. So it works for her. But yeah, I want to do conventions, but I want to be strategic. I don't want it to be like half my energy is to arranging how to get my stock there and like how to get myself there. I don't want to have to worry about that.
And I almost think as an author, paneling is better because then you're selling yourself.
Exactly.
And I know how to put on a show. Like I can am it up. Like
I'm way more comfortable with that.
Yeah, and that's the hard thing. Some people aren't as light switch with it, and so vending at a table is easier because now you're not selling you're selling your book.
Yeah, and you've got some, like you've got it's a mental thing, but you have distance between you and the person. Whereas with me, I find it harder to be at my table and have somebody just browsing. It just feels weird to me. Whereas if I'm moderating a panel, I'm making eye contact. Like I'm in a different zone completely.
Yeah. Which is funny because that actually brings me up to the first convention that I want to talk about. So in the Northeast, we have conventions literally every day. Like during the summer, they are everywhere. I mean, you can't. It's borderline comical. They're trash, unfortunately, is what I have to say. They've diffused so many, and so many of them have gone bankrupt because of this. But our big one that normally happens in July is formally Boston Comic-Con. And it is on the East Coast, the largest superhero convention outside of New York City Comic-Con.
Wow.
And it was big. So I remember I just by chance happened to be driving not even close to the venue. The last year that Stan Lee was doing his media tour. And Stan Lee was one of the speakers, signers, all of that. The line going out was over a mile long.
Holy shit.
They broke fire code. They couldn't get people to leave fast enough to get new people in. They had oversold. It was actually kind of a nightmare for everyone. The city of Boston was pleased. But it really showed me like, well, damn, like this is a thing. Like superheroes are no longer a dirty secret. So it was talked about and everyone always talked about it. So thinking that I was going to vend there, my friend Amanda, who I actually do vending with, was like, let's go check it out. We'll lay the land. We'll see what's good, what's bad. We'll make some decisions because a vending spot there is between $700 to $5,000.
Holy shit, man.
And we wanted to make sure we would get our money back. So we went the first year, it was bought out by Fan Expo, which is a mega conglomerate that does literally fan events. It was trash. It was so incredibly disappointing to see that.
That's too bad.
The only thing specifically comic book related there was the company that does comic book grading. They were there. No DC, no Marvel, no.
Wow. Well, what were they thinking? That's just ridiculous.
We made the joke that one, the LASIK eye care should not be the best booth in a comic book convention.
No, it shouldn't.
And it should have been renamed the T-shirt convention because the only real vendors that were there were T-shirt sellers that were selling illegally licensed T-shirts.
Oh my God.
They couldn't fill up the vending space. And I've been to, and I'll talk about it in a minute, I've been to another one there that maybe has spoiled me for life, but it was so disappointing. I don't particularly care about getting autographs. I don't really want to meet celebs. Like, it It's not my cup of tea. And for those who love it, this wasn't a bad one. But they split off like 1/3 of the Boston's largest convention center, and 1/3 of it was just celebs. Then 1/3 of it was empty, and 1/3 of it was vendors.
Wow.
It was sad. And I've heard it's gotten that was a transition year and things were being ironed out and contracts, and we ultimately decided that vending there would have been one of the most horrific deals. And since then, I've had a friend vend and said no. But it was kind of disappointing to see, like, oh, superheroes have become so in vogue that people are willing to cash in on us and basically treat us as walking wallets.
Yeah, a commodity and nothing else.
Yeah, there was no heart. There was no love behind it, and it was.
Yeah, and that's the problem, really.
Ugh.
Like when a lot of these. So this actually transitions very well into my first one I want to talk about, which is Emerald City Comic Con. Emerald City started out small. It didn't start out as the really big convention it is today. And it started out really focused on fans. And I'm not saying that's not the case anymore. I'm just saying it started out with a lot of heart behind it. And I actually know the guys that helped start it. And when they sold it, they sold it to, I don't know if it was Fan Expo, but it is one of the big ones. It's the ones that run like San Diego and New York. Like it's like the really big group. When they sold it, the biggest complaint I heard from people that went every single year was that it had lost its heart. It no longer had the heart and soul it had. Sure, it was able to attract bigger names, which was kind of neat, but it didn't have the same heart that it used to have. And I remember, I went to Emerald City to film, so it was still small enough to where we could get into vendors hall before anybody got there and film a scene and then walk around. And then when I was still acting and had a production company, we released our superhero web comedy series. We premiered it at Emerald City Comic Con. And we had a little table in a hallway because, again, we knew the guys that were running it. They liked us. But they were like, we don't have a vending spot for you. So here's a spot in the hallway, which was the hallway between where you get your badges and go into the expo hall. So we had a lot of foot traffic. Actually, it was great. But we premiered there and we packed out a room. We were one of the last things on the last day. And we were really worried about that spot. But because we had been handing out flyers and meeting people all weekend, most of the cast was there in costume throughout the weekend. We packed out that room. It was standing room only when we premiered. And it was great. And I remember walking around the convention, and it was big. Like, it had really gotten big at this point. But it felt like a big family. You had all these geeks cosplaying and in geek t-shirts and waiting outside for panels and talking. Like, one of them was a BSG panel and they were talking fan theory about the Cylons, and I was like, oh my god, these are my people. Like, this is amazing. And it wasn't being talked about ironically, it was being talked about like almost scholarly, like very seriously, and I loved it. I was so here for it. But because I was working the convention, I really didn't get the chance to experience that convention. And by the time I was like really ready to go back to a convention, Emerald City had been sold. And so many of the people that had gone, like I said, throughout the years told me, just don't. It's not what it used to be. And so I haven't been back since, unfortunately. I'd like to go. I hear interesting things, like they're starting to expand more into local artists, and because that was one of the big complaints. They cut out the local artists, the local authors, the local talent, and they made it more national. And now they're bringing it back where they are bringing in more of the local filmmakers and authors and cosplayers and stuff. So I think I would like to go back when they do open it back up.
So it's owned by Reed Exhibitions, which is a subsidiary of Relics, which is a conglomerate of a publishing house and a scientific publishing journal operated out of the UK. Like,
that's weird.
If you look at their diversified, like, they're on multiple trading, like,
that's interesting.
It's a multi-billion-dollar company. So
yeah. No, they sold it when they sold it. It was from a business standpoint a gold move. It was great. But I've been, like I said, I'm happy to hear they're bringing some of the local flavor back in, because Seattle has a thriving, or it did before the pandemic, a thriving arts community, a thriving independent film community. Tons of authors live around and in Seattle. You have tons of game developers. I mean, it's a geek mecca, honestly.
Actually, game developers brings me up to my number 2.
You do.
So the reason why I think Boston Comic Con, or Fan Expo as it is now, runs so like meh, and it's not bad, it's just meh. My first experience in this particular convention center was PAX East. And for those of you who don't know, PAX was formerly known as the Penny Arcade something
Expo. Penny Arcade Expo.
And it has turned into the premier video game release thing.
And tabletop.
Oh my God.
Games too.
So PAX is an experience.
Yeah.
Where Boston Comic Con, or Fan Expo, I need to get this right, I could see it all in 2 hours and like be done and not have missed out on anything. There's no panels, there's no nothing, just vending on the floor and celebs. PAX is an experience for the whole family, in which 4-day passes might need to be eventually expanded into week-long passes.
Mm-hmm.
They go for like several $100s. And if you don't get in the waiting room, you go straight to eBay and they've quadrupled in price because damn. So PAX is this massive convention floor where it's all video game stuff. It's tabletop books being sold. It's the best display I've ever seen was for Skyrim Online. Damn.
Yeah.
It was the TV. I don't even know, like, was it a single TV? Like, in my mind, it's like a football field hanging from the ceiling, showing me this commercial for the best game I've never played. And so I was like, oh, I want to go check out their booth. They don't have a booth. They have a corner.
Yeah.
And in the corner, they took artifacts from the game, made them real armor, real helmets, swords, everything. And they made it into a historic museum showing the history of Skyrim. You didn't build a booth, you built an experience.
Yes. Like, and the whole convention is like that. That's just not just that one person, it's the whole convention.
Marvel was releasing some sort of co-op game thing. And it was one of the only areas that like I could get to, because I'm not waiting in line to play a game that I'm not really interested in. I'm there for the spirit and to see things. And so this one, Hawkeye, of all random people, comes over, and Hawkeye was freakishly ripped and really needed to be wearing a cup, because to look at, like, wow, your arrow showing. And so the two guys I went with are just laughing because they're like, he's basically fallen into a porn that he's never leaving. But like, this dude was so jazzed to tell me about like the awesome co-opness of this game. The game wasn't all that great, to be honest, but he was so excited to like, and he saw me in a superhero t-shirt and we talked, and oh my God, like it was annoyingly infectious. And when my anxiety kicked in and I was like, oh God, we're shoulder to shoulder with people, I need to get out of here, I would go out into the circling building around it. I'm just going to go play exploding kittens with human-sized cards in this random room.
Yep.
Or I'm going to go rave to 8-bit music DJs that are having a rave in the middle of the day. I walked out, like days later, I was like, I'm still unpacking what happened there.
I loved how many tabletop games you could play test. I don't even know where to start.
It is the funniest thing because, yes, there are some stereotypes that are very true. Like, really, they need to be handing out deodorant. Me included. I'm a sweaty mess in there.
Yeah.
Like, the smell of PAX. It has a hashtag.
Yeah, it really does.
But you would be walking around and people would be like, dude, you want to play a game? We need a fifth for whatever we're testing, and this is the developer, and they want to make. Okay.
Yeah.
Hello, my new best friends that I've never met.
I know.
And people there were so like it's what I want for a comic book convention. Like,
yeah.
I for 6 hours was the biggest video game junkie in the world. Like,
but it's friendly. It's a friendly environment. Like one of my best friends knows the people that run PAX East and West. And the whole thing about PAX is when you're here, you're home. It's like it's coming home. And it really was for all that. The one time I went, because I was on a panel, I got the whole 4-day pass, and I went for 2 days of it because I couldn't go for the first 2. And it was, first of all, incredibly overwhelming, but also I was shocked at how friendly people were. And it wasn't just because I was walking around with my friend who everybody knew. It was just, they were just friendly people. It was nice.
I set out on the last time so we go like every other year. So last time I went, my goal was to get a photo with every X-Men. and I'm telling you right now that the number of male Jean Greys was startling. Like, I mean, full body effects. Like, it was impressive, and it's very targeted towards video games and tabletop gaming, but they also understand that there's a lot of superhero video games, or there's a lot of fantasy video games. So all of those people come out in droves because you're there to celebrate the medium that is acknowledging your geek, which is just, who knew video games would bring so many people together?
Well, and it's impressive that a con that big stays in its lane. You know what I mean? Like, they don't try to be everything. They know exactly what they are, and they do it, which honestly, some of these larger conventions could learn something from, because they're trying to be everything for everybody, and PAX doesn't try to be that. It knows what it is.
And I like the fact that the panels, some of them are fandom, like the panels are where it reaches out to the broader audience.
Yeah.
So I could go to a superhero panel, or I could go to an anime panel, but I'm not missing out if I don't, because that's not the only reason I'm here. So that was something that I felt that Fan Expo, like the panels, that was missing. The fun, not floor activities. The DJ doing 8-bit music wasn't selling me anything. He just really wanted to show off his 8-bit music. And it was
exactly.
Awesome.
Exactly. Well, that kind of, weirdly enough, leads me to my second one.
Okay.
Which is actually I was gonna do this one third, but I'm gonna do this one second. Geek Girl Con.
Okay.
Now, Geek Girl Con is a smaller convention. And most people, it's getting a bigger name, at least it was before the pandemic. It hasn't been going all that long. I think it's been going for 9 or 10 years.
Okay.
And I discovered it because I was doing I was doing marketing for our superhero web series. And this year Geek Girl Con happened in Seattle. They had a panel called Women in Web Series. So I wanted to go, I wanted to network, and it was rough. Like their first year, they were all over the fucking place. Like they didn't have the convention center. It was like you're walking blocks to go to different rooms. And they were showing a rough cut of a documentary about Wonder Woman and Wonder Woman's influence on pop culture and basically the women warrior. And I thought, this is going to be so much fun. I'm going to go. It'll be great. And I go in, and this is really the first convention that I attended as an attendee. I wasn't working. I wasn't doing anything at it except just going. And I sit down in a room, and it's primarily women because it was at first marketed to the female geek. And it's still the tagline is celebrating the female geek. But everybody's welcome. It has all kinds of, it's big on diversity and that kind of thing. And I remember sitting in this room, watching this rough cut, listening to this panel of women who worked in the industry in varying degrees, and just realizing that I found my tribe. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was in a room full of strangers, but I knew these people. I knew these women. We were all geeks. We were all feminists. We were all committed to these empowering female narratives within geek culture. And because I had never experienced that in a large group before, and I'm crying. It was literally like going to church. That's how I described it. And I was sold, and I have gone to Geek Girl Con every year since, except for the pandemic. And for me, going to PAX wasn't coming home. Going to Geek Girl Con, that's when I feel like I'm home. And we go, it's very family friendly. And so there's one day we go as a family, and then there's one day that's just for me. And I could be walking through that convention by myself, and I feel like I'm with my people. I don't feel alone. I strike up conversations with people in line waiting for panels. I'm like, oh my God, you're cosplaying as one of the men with blue hands from Firefly. And they're like, oh my God, weren't they the creepiest ever? Or I just threw this costume together this morning. I didn't even know what I was doing. And it's just like, they're just your people, I recently, before the pandemic, I was getting on panels, and I was starting to get some inroads in there. I had met one of my geek idols from Geek Girl Con, Jennifer K. Stuhler, who was one of the founders of the convention, whom I adore. She's a geek, feminist, historian goddess. I mean, she's amazing. But that convention, every year I go, and especially now trying to contribute to that convention, I feel so, it's an indescribable feeling of coming home, and I'm with my people, and I'm with family in a sense. And I seriously love that convention. It's gotten a little bit bigger, but it's committed to staying smaller and accessible to people. And I love it for that.
So the first one I ever vended at was called Bangor Comic Con, and it was in Bangor, Maine, but near where I grew up. And my friend Amanda had done it the year before and was like, this is a great one to cut your teeth with. And it was amazing because, I mean, we're Maine. One, we don't have this type of stuff, and we're so spread out that getting us together, but it was the coolest thing when all these families would come up and be like, oh yeah, we watch this as a family. So this is our thing. We now have a place that we can go do this outside.
Yep.
And my kids can see that they're not the weird ones.
Yep.
Oh my God. When they would tell me stories, ugh.
They have, Geek Girl Con has every year a DIY science area. And they partner with different female scientists from all different disciplines to come in and do a table where it's hands-on science experiments. So you've got engineers. They've brought in people that worked for NASA. Every year they have the bug chicks that come in with their bugs, and Rosalind loves these women. She looks forward to it every year. She's like, I hope they brought the tarantula again. And the tarantula has a name. I think it's Grover, because he's got blue fur. She's like, I hope they brought Grover. She loves this freaking tarantula. Like, it doesn't bite. It's like she just lets it crawl over her. She's like all in for this. Like, they have stink bugs. They have beetles. She's so all in for the bug chicks. She would stay there the whole weekend if I let her. But it's all about, for girls, people who identify as women, as female in particular, it's about exposing them to other women in these professions that are not traditionally seen as accessible to women still. And it's that the whole convention is like that. It's incredible. And so it's very similar. It's like exposing kids to the fact that you're not weird because you love this stuff. There are other people that love this stuff too.
And it's kind of funny because now that, superheroes have become so mainstream, we instantly assume like, oh, now I see the thing I love up on the TV, but I'm still very much alone.
Mm-hmm.
So for a lot of these conventions, it's a chance for them. One, I mean, it's kind of funny because at some of them there is actual dating, speed dating.
Yeah.
But that's the type of thing that people are looking for. They want to connect with these other people. And I think that was the problem with Fan Expo, was it was an exploitation and not a reason to bring people together. And
exactly.
I felt so bad. Unfortunately, Bangor Comic Con got sold. Chris McMillan had a really bad year. The venue really screwed him over. And the people who are running these smaller conventions, and I mean, Bangor Comic Con is kind of big in regard to a lot of them. It only takes one bad year or 1 year of good sunshine or a snowstorm and they're bankrupt. So, but all of that obviously changed come pandemic time.
Yeah.
Which brings up my last one. And I'm kind of excited about this partly because it starts next week. But was it you who originally messaged me about QuaranCon?
Last year, yeah, because there was I think they wanted to do a superhero panel. And I was very much like, oh, don't you feel that with people that aren't superhero authors? Don't you even do that? And I know one of the organizers, and I was like, please, please, please let me send you some actual superhero authors. And she was like, okay, yeah, sure.
I don't even remember. I don't remember the discussion. I remember the back end. We had like a hype person in the room, like talking up what we were doing. And I just thought it was so much fun.
I think I moderated that panel.
I think you did.
Yeah.
I was Samantha Bryant on it with us?
It was you. I think it was Karen DM. Samantha might have been on there, and then there was one other person, and I don't remember who it was.
And it's not to say it wasn't amazing. This is now pandemic brain speaking.
Yeah, exactly.
But what I really loved about this wasn't a let's fill a gap in the market. This was, we're all stuck at home and we're kind of missing this thing that we love. So a bunch of geeks got together and they were like, let's do something for the geeks. And
exactly.
The best part about it was it felt like they were doing something for me, not I was being sold. I mean, there was plenty of online vendors for me to go check out and there was some really cool stuff, but the lineup was just, it was a fun celebration of geek and let's make the best of a bad situation.
Exactly.
And this year, though they didn't take my panel, so scolding you. But they had such a great reception the first time round that they actually had to turn people away, which I guess is really a great thing. But they've expanded it. They've bulked up. There's now volunteers involved. It's really just kind of a cool situation. I'm a little bit nervous because I'm actually doing a reading on the first day of the convention. I wish I wasn't the first day.
You'll get a lot of interest. Nobody's burned out on anything yet, so it's great.
I gotta find something in which I don't swear left and right.
Actually, they don't. We had a moderator meeting because I'm moderating a panel for QuaranCon, and it's okay. You just announce that it's NSFW.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll end on one of the fade to black scenes later in the series.
Careful. Not everybody likes blood and guts with their sex scene.
Oh no! I'll do it from the not blood and guts one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a narrow audience. And now that they've been narrated, like now I have to step up my game. But yeah, so again, I think they brought heart to it, and they've expanded. They listened to the audience. They saw what worked, what didn't work, and they've adjusted accordingly. And really, it's even the Facebook group that I'm in. It's just geeks being geeks, and the conversations that go in there are so dumb and amazing, and I love them because there was. Oh God, it must have been a couple of weeks ago. There was a discussion about photon torpedoes and like the engineering marvel of them, and like some of these people are engineers, and I was like, oh God, I just got out geeked. Like I need to back away from this conversation.
Well, and I love so Virginia McLean, who is an author of urban fantasy, and please go check out her books. She's wonderful. She's a total delight. She just took this on, and honestly, last year it was very quick and dirty. They decided to do it. 2 or 3 weeks later, it was up. And this year, like you said, they expanded it. It is literally worldwide. Like they're juggling every time zone you could think about, about 100 volunteers. It's incredible. And what I also love about it is that it's not just your typical fan convention because Virginia is an author, she's bringing in a lot of author stuff too. So there are workshops. If you are an author, there's a workshop track that you could do, not just panels. And I love that they're kind of combining that, because at an in-person convention, you're really hamstrung by space. You don't have space to do everything. But because they're doing it online, they're able to kind of play with that a little bit while still keeping it in the fantasy convention lane. And I really appreciate that they're doing that.
And I think that it's like, I knew last year that it was like a 2-week turnaround, and it didn't feel that way. Like,
no,
we all kind of knew it, but watching some of the panels, I was like, this is as good as any other convention I've ever been to. And the people that were on it, I did appreciate that they were dynamic, because being at Zoom can be boring. But I also, sometimes I just cranked up the volume and cleaned my house while I was listening to panels, and it was awesome.
Exactly. Well, and I think, I'm actually not going to talk about NorwestCon, mainly because it's very local to here, and I feel like we're covering a lot of it with QuaranCon. But one of the things I do really quick want to say, because we are way over time, is I feel like conventions, much like viewing films, is going to go through a slight metamorphosis, because there are a lot of conventions that went online. Like, for instance, NorwestCon, which is a huge fantasy convention here in Washington. They went all online this year. And I haven't heard if that affected how many people bought passes, but from what I understand, they were still going like gangbusters. And so I have to wonder if, at the very least, they wouldn't offer an online pass that maybe had limited content, but recognizing that they could, one, expand beyond local fans, and two, get to fans who might not be mobile, ones that might have trouble actually getting out of their house or might not feel comfortable getting out of their house.
Well, and I would love to attend San Diego Comic-Con. I'm not spending the thousands of dollars on a hotel, the pass, the airplane for a week-long thing. I would love to go do it if I just had money to throw.
Yeah.
But if it was a, couple $100 and I could buy an online pass and watch it from the comfort of my home, I would work in front of the TV and, thumb through what panels I wanted to see.
Yeah.
And I think that would be awesome. And I think I don't think it would diminish your in-person at all.
No.
I think it would be expanding your reach.
Well, and you wouldn't get some of the things like what we were talking about with PAX and Geekorama, where you go and you're like spending time with geeks and you're having that kind of experience. But if all you wanted was panels and conversation, then you could very easily do that with an online format. And I have to wonder and hope that some of these larger conventions might take a look at things like QuaranCon and what has had to have been done the past year, and maybe start figuring out how to work that in, because I think it's a valuable option, honestly. And I am looking forward to QuaranCon.
Oh, I am too. I've kind of cleared my evenings for this week.
Well, and I'm doing, if anybody's listening and interested, I'm doing a panel Saturday. I believe it's 10 a.m. Pacific. And it's all about existing mythologies. And I'm basically talking myths with authors that have used it in their books. And the great part is most of these authors use things like Mesopotamian, Sumerian, Norse, African mythologies. Like we're expanding beyond the Greco-Roman pantheon, and it's exciting.
I'll definitely watch that. Do they record them? Do you know?
Yeah, they're on YouTube. They would be up on YouTube. So. Oh,
good, because I might even go back and see if I missed any from last year.
I think you can still access those. Don't quote me on that. But I'm assuming because they're all going up on YouTube.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'll definitely check that out. Well, that is the episode. We, unfortunately, who knows what's going on for the rest of this year. So conventions it's up in the air what's going to be happening.
Yeah.
Some of them are canceling for the summer, and I hear that some of the fall ones are holding out, but so
we don't know.
Regardless, I hope one way or the other you have found your geek tribe and you have managed to keep your geek going during this lovely lockdown. Well,
and if you're looking for something in June, Superhero Fiction is having the Convention of Heroes in June. The page on our website will be up in about a week, and you can take a look at some of our offerings. We're expanding it from last year, so we're pretty excited about that.
We're even trying to take our own advice and keep it on brand.
We'll see if we can do it.
We'll see if that happens. All right. So we will see you in 2 weeks. So have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everyone.
To stay up to date with the Geekorama podcast, you can watch our videos on YouTube or subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts. And if you enjoy the show, leave us a review or hit the thumbs up button.